All right. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat
Shabbat shalom.
shalom.
Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom.
shalom. We are back,
Hallelujah.
continuing with our look at the triennial Torah portion. This week, we are going to be looking at Bereshit, Genesis chapter 24. It's a pretty long chapter, Genesis chapter 24. We're going to talk about a few different things. It's basically one main theme that's throughout the chapter. We're going to look at this week's chapter here is Abraham was old. Abraham was old. He's old. Okay. We're going to go ahead and pull up. I'm going to get right into it. I'm going to pull up the chapter here. Read it all the way through. Genesis chapter 24. Let me see here. There we go. All right. Let's see here. Okay, go ahead and start reading for us Genesis 24, starting with the first verse.
And Abraham was old, advanced in years, and Yahweh had blessed Abraham in every way. And Abraham said to the oldest servant of his house, who ruled over all that he had, please put your hand under my thigh, so that I make you swear by Yahweh, the Elohim of the heavens and the Elohim of the earth, that you do not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I dwell, but to go to my land and to my relatives, and take a wife for my son Yitzhak. And the servant said to him, what if the woman refuses to follow me to this land? Do I then take your son back to the land from which you came? And Abraham said to him, beware lest you take my son back there. Yahweh Elohim of the heavens, who took me from my father's house and from the land of my relatives, and who spoke to me and swore to me, saying, to your seed I give this land. He sends his messenger before you, and you shall take a wife for my son from there. And if the woman refuses to follow you, then you shall be released from this oath. Only do not take my son back there. Then the servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham, his master, and swore to him concerning this matter. And the servant took 10 of his camels, of his master's camels, and left. For all his master's good gifts were in his hand. And he arose and went to Aram Naharaim, to the city of Nahor. And he made his camels kneel down outside the city by a fountain of water at evening time, the time when women go out to draw water. And he said, Yahweh, Elohim of my master Abraham, please cause her to meet before me this day, and show loving commitment to my master Abraham. See, I am standing here by the fountain of water, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. Now let it be that the young woman to whom I say, please let down your jar to let me drink, and she says, drink, and let me water your camels too. Let her be the one you have appointed for your servant Yitzhak. And let me know by this that you have shown loving commitment to my master. And it came to be before he had ended speaking that Rivka, who was born of Bethuel, son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, came out with her jar on her shoulder. And the young woman was very good looking, a maiden, no man having known her. And she went down to the fountain, filled her jar, and came up. And the servant ran to meet her and said, please let me drink a little water from your jar. And she said, drink, my master. And she hurried and let her jar down to her hand and gave him a drink. And when she had finished giving him a drink, she said, let me draw water from your camels too, until they have finished drinking. And she hurried and emptied her jar into the true, ran back to the fountain to draw water, and drew for all his camels. And watching her, the man remained silent in order to know whether Yahweh had prospered his way or not. And it came to be when the camels had finished drinking that the man took a golden nose ring weighing half a shekel and 2 bracelets for her wrists weighing 10 shekels of gold, and said, "Whose daughter are you? Please inform me. Is there room in your father's house for us to spend the night?" And she said to him, "I am the daughter of Bethuel, Milcah's son, whom she bore to Nahor." And she said to him, "We have both straw and fodder enough, and room to spend the night." And the man bowed down his head and worshipped Yahweh. And he said, "Blessed be Yahweh Elohim of my master Abraham, who has not forsaken his loving commitment and his truth toward my master. As for me, being on the way, Yahweh led me to the house of my master's brother." Then the young woman ran and informed those of her mother's house these matters. And Ribkah had a brother whose name was Laban. And Laban ran out to the man to the fountain. And it came to be when he saw the nose ring and the bracelets on his wrists, on his sister's wrists, and when he heard the words of his sister Ribkah, saying, "Thus the man spoke to me." And then that he went to the man and saw him standing by the camels at the fountain. And he said, "Come in, O blessed of Yahweh. Why do you stand outside? I prepared the house and the place for the camels." So the man came into the house while he unloaded the camels and provided straw and fodder for the camels, and water to wash his feet and the feet of the men who were with him, and set food before him to eat. But he said, "Let me not eat until I have spoken my word." And he said, "Speak on." And he said, "I am Abraham's servant, and Yahweh has blessed my master exceedingly, and he has become great, and he has given him flocks and herds and silver and gold and male and female servants and camels and donkeys. And Sarah, my master's wife, bore a son to my master when she was old, and he has given to him all that he has. And my master said to me, and my master made me swear, saying, 'Do not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites in whose land I dwell, but go to my father's house and to my relatives and take a wife for my son.' And I said to my master, 'What if the woman does not follow me?' But he said to me, 'Yahweh before whom I walk sends his messenger with you, and shall prosper your way. And you shall take a wife for my son from my relatives and from my father's house. Then when you go to my relatives, you are to be released from this oath. And if they do not give her to you, then you are released from my oath.' And this day I came to the fountain and said, 'Yahweh, Elohim of my master Abraham, please, if you are prospering the way in which I am going, see, I am standing by the fountain of water. And when the young woman comes out to draw water, and I say to her, please give me a little water from your jar to drink. And she says, drink, and let me draw from your camels too. Let her be the woman whom Yahweh has appointed for my master's son.' I had not yet ended speaking in my heart, then see, Ribkah was coming out with her jar on her shoulder. And she went down to the fountain and drew water. And I said to her, please let me drink. And she hurried and let her jar down from her shoulder and said, drink, and let me water your camels too. So I drank and watered, and she drank, and she watered the camels too. And I asked her and said, whose daughter are you? And she said, the daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son, whom Milcah bore to him. Then I put the nose ring on her nose, the bracelets on her wrist, and I bowed my head and worshipped Yahweh and blessed Yahweh, Elohim of my master Abraham, who had led me in the true way to take the daughter of my master's brother for his son. And now, if you are going to show loving commitment and truth to my master, let me know, and if not, let me know, so that I turn to the right or to the left. And Laban answered Bethuel too and said, the matter comes from Yahweh. We are not able to speak to you either evil or good. See, Ribkah is before you. Take her and go, and let her be your master's son's wife, as Yahweh has spoken. And it came to be when Abraham's servant heard their words that he bowed himself towards the earth before Yahweh. And the servant brought out ornaments of silver and gold and garments. and gave them to Rivkah. He also gave costly gifts to her brother and to her mother, and he and the men who were with him ate and drank and spent the night. When they arose in the morning, he said, "Let me go to my master." But her brother and her mother said, "Let the young woman stay with us a few days, at least 10, then you go." And he said to them, "Do not delay me. Since Yahweh has prospered my way, let me go so that I go to my master." And they said, "Let us call the young woman and ask her." So they called Rivkah and said to her, "Are you going with this man?" And she said, "I shall go." So they let Rivkah, their sister, and her nurse, and Abraham's servant and his men, and they blessed Rivkah and said to her, "Let our sister become the mother of thousands of 10,000s, and let your seed possess the gates of those who hate them." And Rivkah and her young woman arose, and they rode on the camels and followed the man. So the servant took Rivkah and left. And Yitzchak came
from the way of Be'er Lahai Roi, for he dwelt in the south. And Yitzchak went out to meditate in the field in the evening, and he lifted his eyes and looked and saw the camels coming. And Rivkah lifted her eyes, and when she saw Yitzchak, she dismounted from her camel. And she had said to the servant, "Who is this man walking in the field to meet us?" And the servant said, "It is my master." So she took a veil and covered herself. And the servant told Yitzchak all the matters he had done. And Yitzchak brought her into his mother's tent and his mother Sarah's tent. And he took Rivkah, and she became his wife. And he loved her. Thus Yitzchak was comforted after his mother's death.
All right. Okay, very good. All right, let's go back up here. There's a lot of things going on. Okay, let's go back up to verse number 1. Verse number 1.
Can not have my paper.
Let's see here. All right, it begins over here in verse 1 where it says Abraham was old. He's old and advanced in years. It's interesting that we have both of those things being said here. The fact that he was old and that he was advanced in years. Seems like the inspiration really wanted for us to understand that he was old. It seemed like he was already old. He was old from the beginning. From when we started even knowing about Abraham, he was old. We don't really know what young Abraham was like. It's possible. It's possible that at this point, well, at this point, the commentators saying that Abraham was about 140 years old. So that's almost double the amount of years when we meet Abraham, it seems. Wasn't he like 70 when we even found out about him? So he's pretty old. The other thing is, when we think about this chapter, it gives us this verse here, but the verse really isn't dealing with so much the age of Abraham. I think, though, that the age of Abraham and the fact that he was advanced in years causes us to kind of get understanding as to what is the kind of main topic of the chapter, which is the sending out of the servant of Abraham to go and find a wife for his son. If we understand that, Abraham is in fact old, he is in fact advanced in years. He has this thing that the Most High said that he was going to do for him. And if these people are even close in their the things that they write about Abraham and his age and Yitzhak's age for that matter, time is getting away from the son.
He's like 30 something, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, is he 30 or 40? I think they want to say that he's 40, or at least close to 40.
Why they didn't marry him off when he was like 15.
Yeah. And so it's almost as if we see like a sense of urgency with Abraham in terms of making sure that the ball is rolling, the proverbial ball is rolling, so that he's able to see at least the initial stages of the coming together of his, this covenant that the Most High made with them. And so, again, the chapter begins with telling us that Abraham is old, but I think that this is only just kind of a pretext that we gain to understand, the why of everything that comes after in terms of Abraham sending out his servant to go do this task.
I think that urgency is something that a lot of Torah teachers don't hit on with this verse, because it seems like he's like, and I mean, talking to the servant, trying to set things in place before he feels like he's about to die.
Right. So when you look at this verse, like, is it disjointed? Is it like a parenthetical interjection over here, or is it connected? Is it directly connected to the verses that go after it? I feel like the one way that you're able to look at this verse and see a connection is to think of it as kind of the catalyst for what is getting ready to happen. And inspiration causes us to know that Abraham he's old, and he is advanced in years, and the Most High has blessed him in every way. But there's an obvious way that we can see that he hasn't blessed him. Where's his grandbabies at? Where's his daughter-in-law at? Right? He's been blessed in every way. A lot of ways. Because we know that every is a synodochi right there. How you say that? Synecdoche. It's a synecdoche right there. It's saying every, but it wants us to know that he's really blessed. But just by knowing the life of Abraham, we know that there are things that are still missing in his blessings. But then when we get to this second verse over here, we see the potential answer to these issues. So we want to deal with this sending out of this servant over here. And so in verse 2, when we look over here, it says that Abraham said to his oldest servant who ruled over all that he had. This chapter doesn't tell us by name who this servant is. By name, we find we see that he is a very important servant. He's at the top of the pecking order in terms of those, that's connected with his family, but it doesn't call him by name. We don't explicitly get to know exactly who is this servant. Most commentators understand this servant to be Eliezer.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer to that is, of course, if we look over, let's go back over to Genesis chapter 15. Okay. As soon as I can capture my cursor. It's actually been commandeered by my iPad. Hold on one second here. I'm having some technical difficulties. Oh, here we go. Let's look at chapter 15 and read for us
Genesis 15.
verse 2.
And Abram said, Master Yahweh, would you give me, seeing I go childless, and the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus?
Okay, very good. At this time in Abraham's life, he has this servant, Eliezer, who at this point, when Abraham doesn't have a child, he doesn't have a seed, the person that he says basically he's treating as his next of kin in his house is this Eliezer person of Damascus. And so when we think about back over in chapter 24, when we are given this servant here, the eldest servant of his house, the one who ruled over all that he had, the person that this is most likely to be is Eliezer. Okay, this is the person who he is most likely to be being the oldest in his household, being in charge of everything that he owned. And so when you think about this person, right? If you think about, let's go back at this just so we can look at his name here. Let's look at Eliezer. Which means Elohim Oh, my Elohim is a help, or Elohim of help. Eliezer. This word here, 410, is El. 5828 here. The other word is a compound word here is Azer, which means to help. Right? It means to aid. It means to help. If we look at the I don't have the hold on one second. Let me just pull this up here. Just so we can see this here. This. This. Let's look at this word study here. Okay, very good. A helper, one who helps, help, aid, refers to the aid or assistance that is given, whether material or immaterial. And so when we think about the Most High as being our helper, it helps us to think about this Eliezer person as kind of a picture of what we see in terms of the Holy Spirit, in terms of the Ruach HaKodesh, which when we think about the way that Yeshua describes the Spirit, the way that he described the Spirit to his disciples before the Spirit was given, he speaks of the Spirit as a helper. Right? Let's go over to, again, just like the name of the servant of Abraham. Let's go over to John 14. Read for us verse 16.
And I shall ask the Father, and he shall give you another helper to stay with you forever.
He's talking about, read 17 too.
The Spirit of the truth, whom the world is unable to receive, because it does not see him or know him, but you know him, for he stays with you and shall be in you.
He's talking about the Spirit, right? The Ruach. Okay, and so it's called a helper. That word here, let's look at this word a little bit, helper. In the Greek, here we have this word. It's translated as comforter, parakletos, which means intercessor, consoler, advocate, comforter. Okay, this word advocate is a one who pleads the case of another. An advocate, one who pleads the case of another. This is one of the, it's interesting when we look at these words, they're not necessarily synonyms of each other exactly. It's almost as if they're giving us different aspects of what it is that this parakletos, this comforter, this helper, the Spirit that is going to be sent back for us, what it is that he's going to do for us. Not only is he one who is able to plead the cause of another, he's able to plead our case. He's also a consoler, right? One that gives comfort. He's one that gives comfort, right? When we find ourselves in a situation that we aren't able to necessarily, have all of the answers for, we're able to find comfort. We're able to be consoled by the Spirit.
Yes.
He is a intercessor, a mediator, right? One who interposes between parties with a view to reconcile them, right? An intercessor. When you have a situation, and sometimes you have a situation where you need somebody to come in the middle. Like you can't talk to this other person. You're too mad, right? You got too much emotions. It's interesting when you think about where is that at? Is that in Ephesians? Let's see if it is. Oh yeah. Read for us. Start reading at Ephesians 2 and 13 right there.
All right, 2 and 13. But now in Messiah Yeshua, you who once were far off have been brought near by the blood of Messiah.
Okay, so the blood of Messiah has done a work, right? It said, but now in Messiah, you who were far off, you was far off, but you was able to be brought near by the blood of Messiah. So that's saying that the blood of Messiah actually worked as a intercessor, right? As a mediator. You had some issues. Actually, it was the Most High who had issues with you. And by your actions, I guess you had issues with him. But by what Messiah has done, it says that he has brought near. You've been brought near by the blood of Messiah. So keep on going, 14.
For he is our peace, who has both won and having broken down the partition of the barrier.
Go ahead.
Having abolished in his flesh the enmity, the Torah of the commands and dogma, so as to create in himself one renewed man from the two, thus making peace, and to completely restore to favor both of them unto Elohim in one body through the stake, having destroyed the enmity by it, and having come, he brought as good news peace to you who were far off, and peace to those near. Because through him we both have access to the Father by one Spirit.
Okay, so because of what Messiah has done, it says we both, Israel and those that was afar off, Gentiles, both of us now, because of what it is that Messiah has done, have access to the Father by the Spirit, who is in fact the intercessor, the mediator, the one who interposes between parties at variance. We was both at variance with the Most High. But now we have become this one new man. Oh, that's an inside joke. I'm laughing. But we have become this one new man in Messiah. And because of what it is that he has done for us, he destroys the enmity that was between us, Israel, and the Gentiles, and between mankind and the Most High. He destroyed all of the enmity that was between everybody. and brought us all together by the Spirit. And so it's interesting when we think about the connection between Abraham and Eliezer sending out his servant, his trusted servant, the one who was over all of his things, to go out and find a bride. There was an issue. Abraham needed some grandbabies. There was a situation. There was a huge gulf between Abraham and grandbabies. And he sends out his ruach, his servant, his helper, to go and bridge the gap, to make a way for the covenant that the Most High made with him, to make a way for it to come to pass. And so it's interesting that we see with Abraham sending out his servant, the same exact thing is what we see happen with the Most High and the way he sends out his Spirit. Right? And so that we're able to have an intercessor, so that we're able to be rejoined back to the Most High. Let's go over to the book of Isaiah here. Let me move this. Let me move this over. Let me see here. Yeshayahu, Isaiah. That's 51. I need 61. Read for us. Start reading at verse 1. We want to talk about the role of the Spirit, because it's interesting that the role of the Spirit is something that we see in what the Ruach HaKodesh is actually meant to do. We actually see the exact same thing being done by Eliezer. Eliezer is a picture for us what it is that the Spirit is going to be doing in the future. We're able to look at Abraham, Eliezer, what he did, and see something that's done and understand it from its literal perspective, inside the confines of the context of this story over here. And we're also able to look below the surface and also see that there's spiritual significance in what happened over there with Abraham and Eliezer, sending out his son to gather in a bride, that gives us a clear picture of the Ruach HaKodesh. So let's go back over, read Isaiah 61. Read for us here the first 3 verses here.
The Spirit of Master Yahweh is upon me, because Yahweh has anointed me to bring good
Let me just
news.
say, when Messiah Yeshua comes on the scene, he rolls up into the synagogue. He's just now beginning to make a name for himself. He's beginning in his ministry. One of the first things that he is noted for speaking publicly is these verses right here. It's almost as if he's giving a thesis statement for what it is that he's actually coming to do. This is almost his what do doctors
Thesis.
No. What's the they call it a thesis? What's the other thing that they say? Dissertation. This is like the Messiah's dissertation that he gives, as he's coming on the scene. Okay, read verses 1 through 3 here.
The Spirit of the Master Yahweh is upon me, because Yahweh has anointed me to bring good news to the meek. He has sent me to bring up the brokenhearted, to proclaim release to the captives, and the opening of the prison to those who are bound, to proclaim the acceptable year of Yahweh and the day of vengeance of our Elohim, to comfort all who mourn, to appoint unto those who mourn in Zion, to give them embellishment for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, and they shall be called trees of righteousness, a planting of Yahweh to be adorned.
Okay, very good. We want to concentrate. There's so many things, right? There's so many things that somebody could sit up here and talk about these 3 verses for hours. We want to concentrate on one aspect of what it is that this spirit is going to be doing in us, for us, and that is to comfort. To comfort. Let's look at this word here, because this is something we've already seen. We see comforting in the name Eliezer, right? We see comforter being the spirit being poured out. We see the spirit being poured out being an integral part of our experience with the Most High. So let's look over at this word here in the Hebrew here. That word is nacham, properly to sigh. That is to breathe strongly. Like when you just went through the most worst, terriblest thing that you could possibly go through, and you made it. You got through the thing. He just let a little bit of breath come out. That's like almost a thing people say, like a sigh of relief. I want to look at this word here in the ancient. Oh, here it is here. Nacham, which is the noon, which is the sprouted seed, which gives us the idea of continuance, right? We see continuance here. The chet, which is it's a fence, right? It's a wall. With the word chet, we see differentiation, the difference between in and out, right? A distinction is able to be made between that which is in and that which is out. We can understand that to think about the idea of set apartness, right? There's a difference. There's a line between what is set apart and what isn't, right? We're able to make designations between this or that because of this fence, this barrier. This can be something that protects, right? It keeps the bad stuff out. It keeps the good stuff in, right? And then the mem is, it has the idea of mightiness. And so when you have, it's interesting that you have like a continuance, you have a mighty continuance, right, of this barrier, this line, this differentiation. If I am standing here and I have this fence in front of me, I know that I have a layer of safety in front of me, right? I'm able to see something that's dangerous, that's hurtful, that's harmful on the other side, but I'm safe on this side, right? That brings me comfort. That helps me to be at ease, to know that I'm able to rest over here, because over there is harm, is hurt, It's danger, but it can't get through the differentiation. It can't get through this mighty wall, and there's a continuance of this mighty wall that's in front of you, right? And so when we look at this word comfort, it causes us to be able to have this sigh of relief and know that we are safe. And so when we think about what it is that the Spirit is able to do for us, the Spirit is able to bring us to a place of rest, right? A place of comfort, because we're connected to the Most High. We're connected to the Almighty. And so when you think about, again, bringing it back to Eliezer, thinking about Abraham and what he did, he sends out, Abraham sends out his servant to perform this task for him, right? To perform this task of bringing back a wife for Abraham's son. When this task is able to be completed, there's great comfort, right? If we go all the way to the end, there, let's see, 24. This is the end of the story, right? Read verse 67 right there.
And Yitzchak brought her into his mother's tent, and his mother Sarah's tent, and he took Rivkah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. Thus Yitzchak was comforted after his mother's death.
He was comforted over there, right? He was able to receive Nacham once it's all said and done, right? This is the whole point in the first place. So when we think about the work here of Eliezer here and what he did, he literally was sent out as the comforter. He literally was sent out to go and do a job so that he was able to bring comfort not only to Isaac, not only to Yitzhak over here, but also Abraham. Because Abraham, he wants this to happen just as bad as, I don't know if just as bad, but he wanted it to happen pretty bad. Okay, this is part of his story as well, right? And so we see at the end, we have comfort. And so there's great importance given to the job of Eliezer, who, again, is the picture of the Spirit. Romans says, without the Spirit, we're none of his. Without the Spirit, we're none of his. Let's look at something that helps us to understand the importance of the Spirit. Let's look over in 2 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians 3. Let's see here. Let's go up. Okay, let's just go up. Let's start reading at verse 1 here. You want to get to 6, but I just want to just get a little context. Let's look at start reading at verse number 1.
Are we to begin to recommend ourselves again, or do we need as some letters of recommendation to you or from you? You are our letter, having been written in our hearts, known and read by all men, making it obvious that you are a letter of Messiah served by us, written not with ink, but by the Spirit of the living Elohim, not on tablets of stone, but on fleshly tablets of the heart.
hold on. This is very integral part of the situation over here. When we think about Paul talking about these letters of recommendation, but he ain't talking about a physical letter. He said, you are a letter. You're a letter of Messiah, served by us, written not by ink, but written by the Spirit of the living Elohim. The Spirit of the living Elohim wrote you. He wrote your story. Your story is written by him. By the Spirit, right? By the Ruach HaKodesh. And so when we look at the importance of the Spirit, what are you without the Spirit? He said, you're the letter. And the letter was written by the Spirit. Answer this for me. And so when we look over here, keep on going. Read verse. Where'd I stop you at?
Stop me at 3. Or no, you stopped me at 4. Yeah, 3. So 4. I'm going to 4.
Okay, keep on going.
And such trust we have toward Elohim through the Messiah, not that we are competent in ourselves to reckon any matter as from ourselves, but our competence is from Elohim. Who also made us.
Read that again, verse 5.
It says, not that we are competent in ourselves to reckon any matter as from ourselves, but our competence is from Elohim.
Okay, keep on going.
Who has also made us competent as servants of a renewed covenant, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter kills, but the Spirit gives life.
There's a couple of things going on over here. Not only is our competence from the Spirit, right? Our competence is from Elohim, but how though? How though? He could have just said the Spirit of Elohim, just like he said it up here. The Spirit of the living Elohim is the one who wrote the letter, right? But when we see over here where he talks about the competence is of Elohim, this is you walking out that which the Most High calls for you to actually be doing, right? The way that you're able to speak those things that are edifying from the scriptures to people, he's saying the competence is not in ourselves. It's not in our own thoughts. It's not from our own minds, but it is from Elohim, who also made us servants of this renewed covenant, which also is not of the letter, the covenant, but it's of the Spirit. The covenant is of the Spirit. But when we think about what covenant that he's talking about, he's talking about the Spirit in your hearts. He's talking about the Ruach HaKodesh coming inside of you, doing a spiritual heart transplant and taking away that stony heart and replacing it with a heart of flesh. He's talking about the way in which the servant of the Most High is able to go out and gather in his people and bring us back to the Father and bring us back to become the bride of the Son. I want to look at something real quick. For whatever reason, I didn't. I didn't look up. Hold on 1 second here. Hold on 1 second here. I didn't put this in my. Hold on 1 second. go ahead and put in your questions, comments in the comment section. Go ahead and share the video. Go ahead and like it. Go ahead and subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Let me look at this. Let me see here. I want where, oh, here it is. Matthew 22. It's so interesting when we look at Eliezer and the role that he holds, the thing that he does in terms of going out, getting a wife, getting this bride for Isaac, and bringing the bride back. Yeshua gives us this kind of similar imagery of, the sending out and the bringing back in this parable, right? Start reading in verse 1 here in chapter 22 of Matthew.
Yeshua responded and spoke to them again by parables and said, "The reign of the heavens is like a man, a sovereign who made a wedding feast for his son, and sent out his servants to call those who were invited to the feast, but they would not come. Again he sent out other servants, saying, 'Say to those who are invited, see, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and fattened cattle are slaughtered, and all is ready. Come to the wedding feast.' But they disregarded it and went their way. This one to his field and that one to his trade. And the rest, having seized his servants, insulted and killed them. But when the sovereign heard, he was forth and sent out his soldiers, destroyed those murderers, and set their city on fire. Then he said to his servants, 'The wedding feast indeed is ready, but those who were invited were not worthy. Therefore go into the street corners, and as many as you find, invite to the wedding feast.' And those servants went out into the street corners and gathered all whom they found, both wicked and good, and the wedding hall was filled with guests. And when the sovereign came in to view the guests, he saw there a man who had not put on a wedding garment. And he said to him, 'Friend, how did you come in here not having a wedding garment?' And he was speechless. Then the sovereign said to the servants, 'Bind him hand and foot, take him away, and throw him out into the outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen.'"
Okay, so the thing that connects over here, we see this idea of there being this gathering, this wedding feast, and the king is sending out his servant to gather in for the wedding feast. When we think about the role of the Spirit, we think about what it is that the Ruach HaKodesh does, it kind of works like this. The Spirit goes out, right? And the Spirit goes out through the workings. It can go out through the workings of men, right? The Spirit in men, causing men, people, I should say, to go out and speak the words of the Most High. And that person operating in the Spirit, speaking the words of the Most High, and that Spirit resonating with the Spirit inside of you, and dealing with you from a spiritual standpoint, causing your spiritual eyes to be open and accepting the invitation to the gathering. It's interesting when we think about Eliezer when he goes out to gain this wife. You know, he kind of makes a plan, right? I'm gonna go over here. I'm going to say thus and so. And then if she answers in a particular way, then I'm gonna know then that she's the one.
Mhm.
It's almost as if he causes her to go through a test in order to see if she in fact is worthy to be the bride.
Showing you know she's taking a test.
She doesn't. All right. And so it's interesting that when we look at this again, this is a thing that literally happens. This is a thing that, you know, has its own, you know, parts of a story that's literally happening, things that we can gain from the literal aspect of it. But also when we look at this from a spiritual standpoint, understanding that the way that the Father sends out his servant to gather in the bride is exactly the same thing that the Most High has done with the Spirit of the Most High going out, being poured out upon all flesh, turning us, his people, back to himself. It's interesting that we see that Abraham said, I don't want my son to marry one of these Canaanites. Right? So he sends out his servant out to go get someone that was his, you know, of his own kindred, right? He didn't send him over to the land of the Gentiles, which that's where they were. They were in the land already. They were where the Canaanites were. He said, I need you to go back over to where my people is at. And you find my peoples so that my son can take a wife, right? Go back to my land, to my relatives, and take a wife for my son. And so I always look at this, you know, when I think about from a natural perspective, you know, we got to deal with people that are following after Messiah. When I say we, I mean you, because I already found mine already. When I say we, I mean you, because I found me a wife from my relatives to take as a wife, right? I wasn't out here looking at these outsiders thinking about, oh, she got so much potential. I'm going to cause her to be the most holiest woman that she could be. I went out and found me somebody that was already set apart. Right? I found somebody back in my land that was unto my relatives that I was able to take. We need to take some lessons from Abraham over here, because this place that we living in out here in these days is filled with Canaanites, quote unquote. It's filled with these Gentiles. It's filled with these heathens, and we out here looking to flirt, to convert. But this is not the way in which the Most High will have for us to be doing. And so when we think about, again, from a spiritual standpoint, what we see pictured for us with Abraham sending out Eliezer, he's looking for a bride for his son that is familiar to his son. He's looking for a familiar bride, right? Not a stranger, right? And so when we think about something that's familiar, right, we're of the same spirit, right? Again, we spiritualizing these things that physically happen, right? Of the same spirit. We can't be out here dealing with these people who have these different spirits about them. Yeah, we gotta sit up here and be casting out demons and things before we can be joined together with someone, right? As a kind of a principle, from a principle standpoint, this is kind of what we can see over here from what it is that the request that Abraham was making of his servant for his son, is that he wanted someone that was familiar.
Someone who didn't need that much work.
Well, someone that from that standpoint,
she didn't need any work.
from that standpoint, she didn't need any work. She was already ready. Already, she there was a particular criteria that she needed to fit, and the servant went out and he found somebody who met those criteria. He said, if she decides to come, then she must be the one. If she gives the water for the camels, then she's the one. Like he had this specific list that she needed to meet, and then if she met all of those things, then that was the one. And then he said he wasn't going to force her too. He said he wasn't going to force her. This thing wasn't about force. He said he was just going, if she met these certain criteria and decided that she was going to accept the thing, then that made her be the one. She didn't have to be coerced into anything. Just come on back. I promise you'll be happy. Like he wasn't trying to sell her something, right? And so when we look at this, it's again, it's a picture for the way in which that the Spirit comes out and deals with us, right? We have to live in a way that is congruent with the Ruach HaKodesh. Let's look at this real quick. Let's look at Psalms. Let's look at Psalms 119. Read for us 133 right there.
Establish my footsteps by your word, and let no wickedness have rule over me.
He said, establish my footsteps by your word. The way in which I walk has to be according to your word, to the word of the Most High. This is the way that our life, in fact, should be ordered, right? According to the word of the Most High. Look at this here, Ephesians 5. What did I say? Verse 2 right there.
And walk in love as Messiah also has loved us and gave himself for us, a gift and an offering to Elohim for a sweet smelling fragrance.
The way that we are, it looks the same as the way that Messiah was, right? And so in that respect, we're able to see that there is a connection between the bride, who is to be the bride of Messiah, and Messiah. The way that he walked in love, we also should be walking in love. The way that he gave himself for us as a gift and an offering unto Elohim, we also have to understand that our life too is a life of suffering and sacrifice. Okay, so there's a familiarity between the wife, the bride, and the husband, right? Okay, let's go back. Let's go back and think about. Hold on. Let's see here. Let's go back before we get too far away, because we talked about in Genesis. We talked about the fact that the spirit, well, the servant was sent out, typifying the spirit, and but we didn't talk about the second part over here, the oath that was taken, right? I see that up in the comments over there mentioning the oath that was taken. This is an interesting part of this whole situation, that when Eliezer is sent out, he makes this oath with Abraham that he is going to perform the will of Abraham. And so when he makes this oath, when one makes an oath, you're bound to perform it. There's nothing else that you're able to do other than that which you've oathed to do. And so so Eliezer, the servant that's going out, is going out and only doing that which was required by the Father for him to be doing. And so when we look over at this oath that is made, these things are not optional, right? It's not as if like you're not able to make an oath and not do the thing, right? It's not once they went and did this thing that they did, you're not able to not do it. And so we're able to see picture for us the fact that the spirit is going out and is not going out for its own purposes, right? The spirit is going out to perform the purposes of the Father, right? The spirit is going out and performing the works and the words of the Most High only, right? Not his own works, right? But the works of the Most High. It's interesting when we look at, I talked about this before, when we think about this whole idea here of, this oath that is taken, the hand being placed under the thigh. This is understood to be the progenitive parts over here. It's kind of this word here, yarech, which when we look at it, let's see here. We look at this word here. Let's see, verse 2. Under my thigh. It's kind of used in a euphemistic sense where, it literally is saying thigh, right? To mean the thigh, the fleshy softness. But this part over here is really kind of what we, kind of think about in terms of it being used kind of in a euphemistic sense as being the generative parts, right? And so Abraham's generative parts have actually been made holy, right? He has the sign of the covenant on his generative parts, right? His circumcision, right? And so we in these days and times, you go and to court or whatever, and you place your hand on the Bible and you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God on the Bible.
Yeah.
But these people, they making the Bible, right? They making it. So what they gonna swear on? He gonna swear on that which has been declared holy by the Most High, the sign of the covenant, his circumcision, right? It's interesting. It's interesting that again, we think about this in terms of being this these reproductive parts. If we look over here at Numbers chapter 5. Numbers chapter 5 is interesting because we see the same word, yarech. And it helps us to understand how we should think about this word over here. Read for us, just for context, start at 21. Read verse 20 through 22, or verses 21, but I want to read 20 through 22 just for the context.
But if you have turned aside under your husband's authority, and if you have defiled yourself and some man other than your husband has lain with you, then the priest shall make the woman swear with the oath of the curse, and he shall say to the woman, Yahweh make you a curse and an oath among your people. And Yahweh makes your thigh waste away and your belly swell. And this water that causes the curse shall go into your inward parts and make your belly swell and your thigh waste away. And the woman shall say, Amen, amen.
Okay, very good. So the thing that's wasting away is the thigh. All right, it's the thigh here. Let's see if it's the same word. Verse 21. Here. Same word here. Okay, this is our word here. 3409, which is the generative parts. Right? So this is the thing now. If the woman is a lie, if she in fact is a lie, then her reproductive parts are going to rot. Okay? And so again, when we think about what it is that Abraham and his servant are doing over here, this is kind of the thought that we're getting from this idea of this oath that's being made over here. So it's interesting when we think about the customs really of the people of the time. They did things kind of differently back in these days, but these things, although different, we're able to understand their significance. Okay, let's keep on going. Let's look down here some more. Okay, let's drop down and look at verse. Let's go down to verse. Read again for us at 17 here.
And the servant ran to meet her and said, "Please let me drink a little water from your jar." And she said, "Drink, my master." And she hurried and let her jar down to her hand and gave him a drink. And when she had finished giving him a drink, she said, "Let me draw water for your camels too, until they have finished drinking."
Okay, very good. So again, we think about, this whole thing that we see going on with Eleazar, with this one who we suppose to be Eleazar, this servant of Abraham, and we see again that he is testing the lady, right? He tests her to see if she in fact is the one, right? Seeing that she is in fact worthy. It's interesting that when we think about the Ruach, when we think about the spirit of the Most High, we think about the way in which the Most High calls for his people, just like when we looked at the parable of the king sending out this notification for people to come. That in itself is a test. Are you going to come? Not only are you going to come, are you going to come the way that I'm calling for you to come? Are you going to come and come in an appropriate way for the situation? We see that the person who came and he wasn't coming like somebody would come to a wedding. He was cast out. He was bound up and taken away. But all of this is a picture of a testing situation. When we think about Israel in the wilderness, it was a test, right? When we think about Yeshua in the wilderness, right? It was a test. When we think about all of the things that we see in the entire book of Acts, the way in which the apostles at this time are going through these trials and tribulations to see if they are in fact true. Yeshua speaking to Peter, talking about you're gonna denounce me before the cock crows, right? All of these things are pictures of the Most High putting his people to the test. Abraham was put to the test, right? When we look at all of these things, this is the way that the Most High interacts with his people. And so it's interesting that we're able to see that also in this thing that literally happened. Again, this thing that literally happened, that is also a picture of the Spirit going out and bringing back the bride, that she had to be tested, right? He couldn't come back with the wrong one. He had to make sure that he had the right one, right? And so it has all of this criteria that he creates before he even sees her, but she in fact passes the test. This it's interesting when you think about this. You can talk about predestination whenever you think about this story. Actually, there is a criteria that the Most High has, that he came up with, that he's able to look out and say, I'm going to choose this one or that one based on this particular criteria. And he goes ahead and does that. When we look over in Roman, here, let's just look at the verse real quick. Hmm?
Can you mute real quick?
Hold on 1 second here. Let's see here. Where is our verse at? Oh, here we go. Read. Let's see here. 8, 28, and 29.
And we know that all matters work together for good to those who love Elohim, to those who are called according to his purpose, because those whom he knew beforehand.
Yeah, 29 is our verse. Read this again.
Because those whom he knew beforehand, he also ordained beforehand to be conformed to the likeness of his son, for him to be the firstborn among many brothers.
Okay, it says here, those who he knew beforehand, he also ordained beforehand. There was a criteria that the Most High had, him having an intimate knowledge of you beforehand, chose you, and knew how you were going to respond to your calling before you responded to it. And so when we look at him sending out the servant out to get the bride, he said she got to be not a Canaanite. She got to be from my relatives. The servant saying she got to have a particular she got to have a particular character about herself. She got to see that I'm thirsty and my animals is thirsty, and she got to give me water and the animals too. She got to have a certain thing about her, possess particular qualities that are pleasing. And then when she meets all of these criteria, I'm going to choose her. How he goes out not knowing in himself if he's even going to be successful in his pursuits. What if I can't get her to come back? Then just come back. Just don't bring me back no Canaanite women. And don't be taking my son over here in the middle of these other kinds of peoples, right? There's a contingency plan in place.
Just
right?
Straight back home.
Yeah, just don't even be messing with them people if you can't. But the interesting connection here is the fact that there is this these characteristics that are sought after, that he's not backing down on those things. And so when we think about the way that the Most High chooses his people, he's choosing us based on the fact that he understands what we're going to do prior to us doing it.
We're chosen because of what we was going to do.
Of what we are destined to do. And so, we can't be out here trying to force people to live a certain kind of way. Because the Most High knows what you're predestined to be doing. You don't necessarily know, right? We got to say what thus says the Most High, and if that is pleasing to you, then
you're it.
Hallelujah. But if it isn't, I'm not gonna sit up here and try to force the issue.
Stop people down.
I leave that to the spirit. Because I don't know the inner workings of your heart, right? But the Most High does know. And so it's interesting that when we see over here and we look at the servant going out and choosing this bride, it's interesting that he kind of puts the potential bride in a particular situation to see what her reaction is going to be, right? And that's just the way that the spirit works inside of us. When when the spirit comes and dwells on the inside of us, we're too put into situations to see if we're going to actually walk according to the spirit or if we're going to walk according to our flesh, to see if we're going to actually be spiritual letters written by the spirit of Elohim, or if we're going to be people that are walking according to our flesh and our carnal mind. Okay, so let's keep on going. Let's go down a little further here. See if we have anybody have any questions, comments. Go ahead, put them
You want to talk
down.
about how much work she did?
How much work who did?
Rivka, when she got on them camels some water.
Oh, you have something to say about that?
Yeah,
Oh,
she
what?
wasn't a lazy person.
Oh, what that mean?
She wasn't feeble.
What else?
She wasn't lazy.
Mm-hmm. So
that
what
was
that
a lot
mean?
of water. This camels drank like 20 gallons each.
That's how much a camel drink? So what that
A lot
mean?
of water.
Women can't be lazy, are they? Uh-oh. You saying something?
She wasn't lazy. He wasn't trying to get a lazy one.
I mean, I didn't think about it as being like not being lazy.
Strong.
I thought about kind of it from a loving kindness perspective or hospitality. But I guess you could think about it in that regard.
She went the extra mile.
She definitely did go the extra mile. He didn't want to have somebody to come that didn't have all the check marks checked. And so when we think about the way in which this whole thing comes together, again, it's a picture of what it is that the Most High is going to require of us. Mm-hmm. He has criteria that he wants for us to fall in line with. And if we're not able to fall in line with the criteria that he's already pre-established for us, then, we don't, we're not going to make it. Mm-hmm. Right. But the thing about it is that it's not as if he's, he has this list that he wants for us to kind of match up to, that he doesn't properly prepare us for beforehand, right? He gives us access to the power of the Ruach HaKodesh, right? He gives us access to the Holy Spirit, which when we can listen to the leading and guiding of the Spirit, is going to cause us to walk in a way that's pleasing to the Most High. So all we have to do really is just kind of be aware of what it is that the Spirit is calling for us to be doing, and do that. And when we allow that to happen in our hearts and our minds and be manifest through our actions, we're checking off the check marks, right? We're responding in the way that the Most High would have for us to be responding when we follow the leading and guiding of the Ruach HaKodesh.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost as if when we look over at the servant, having the criteria, and then when we see the thing being followed out by the bride to be, again, we have that picture of this predetermined way that we're to be behaving, and then that thing being followed out by the bride. And so it's a perfect picture of kind of the way that the Spirit even moves inside of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's see what we have here. He specifically requested someone who was capable and willing to do the work needed for the role of a bride, of a shepherd. It's not easy work. Yeah. And, it's interesting that when you think about it, again, from that standpoint and kind of how it translates into the spiritual significance, is that, this walk that we live in, this life that we've in fact chosen, that we've freely chosen, is not something that is quote unquote easy, right? There's things for you to be doing. It's not something that we sit back and just be idle, right? There's things to do, right? There's a role to be played, right? There's things that you have to do, and you have to be ready, willing, and able to do what's going to be asked of you. Go ahead.
I just think about when hardship comes or whatever, and a man marries the wrong woman, she'll just be like, oh, why don't you just give up on that? Like, we need money. Go ahead and go to work on Shabbat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let the baby play soccer on the Sabbath. You know what I mean? Like, it becomes a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
When you have someone that isn't at the same level of willing to sacrifice or put in the work and the effort.
Yeah, all of those things. And so
I'm just saying, in today's world,
those are the problems that we would face in today's day and times.
But they're living around a whole bunch of wicked, horrible human beings.
Yeah. And I think that the connection is the whole idea of him going back to his people. Right. And so where, you're going to have problems. You're going to have problems if, you're going to the Gentiles, you're going to people that's on the outside and trying to find a wife from those on the outside, right? Someone who's not rooted and grounded in faith. And for that matter, you as either one we have to think about our own selves, right? Not only the other person, but think about your own self in terms of you yourself being rooted and grounded in faith. Are you or are you going to be the weak link in the situation, right? When we think about what we see with Abraham sending out the servant to go and collect someone that was of his kindred people, again, he's looking for that that continuity. He's looking for that connectiveness, like in the flesh. But from a spiritual standpoint, you know, we have to have that foundation of Messiah being. I'm saying that if you don't have, this is what I would say to young person out here right now. If you're not rooted and grounded in Messiah, then you shouldn't even be worried about trying to find a mate. If you're not rooted and grounded in Messiah, you get yourself to be rooted and grounded in Messiah, and then you could worry about finding a mate, because you're not even properly qualified to be a mate if you're not rooted and grounded in Messiah. If you haven't been connected to the Almighty by way of Yeshua HaMashiach, how you don't even know how to even be a man. You don't even know how to be a woman if you're not operating yourself in a functional way through the power of the Ruach HaKodesh. So I'm saying that you have to first establish a significant and real relationship with your maker, number one, first. And then now you can worry about, once you've done that, now you can worry about finding someone to live the rest of your life with. But again, when we see over here, when we look at Abraham and his servant and Isaac and Rivka over here, that the picture that it sends for us is that we the thing that binds us all together has to be the Almighty. It's interesting when we look at verse 26. Eliezer wasn't just some well, I keep saying Eliezer because I think that's who it was, but the scripture don't say that. The servant, when he goes out, here, read again, read verse 26, read 20, just 24, 25, 26, read those verses there.
24 and 25. And she said to him, I am the daughter of Bethuel, Milcah's son, whom she bore to Nahor. And she said to him, we have both straw and fodder enough and room to spend the night. And the man bowed down his head and worshipped Yahweh.
Okay, the man is the servant. Mm-hmm. The servant is a worshiper himself. He's not just somebody who's just carrying a message, right? He's not somebody who's on the outside, right? He said, what did verse 27 say?
Blessed be Yahweh, Elohim of my master Abraham, who has not forsaken his loving commitment and his truth toward my master. As for me being on the way, Yahweh led me to the house of my master's brother. He
understands that the Most High was in the middle of this situation, and he's giving thanks, honor, and praise to the Almighty himself, right? So again, when we think about Eliezer and this servant and this spiritual significance that's connected with him, and the oath that was taken between the servant and Abraham, and understanding that the will of Abraham was going forth, kind of unadulteratedly going forth, right, without any compromise. When we think about the fact that the Spirit itself is, working out the plan of the Most High for His people, the way that the Most High is able to cause for His will to be manifest in this earth today, while Yeshua is not physically here. Yeshua is here through the Ruach HaKodesh in you and I. Just like we think about the Most High sending out His messengers, and these messengers being kind of this representation of the Most High Himself, us operating in the Spirit is the same as the Most High operating in this earth today through us. Just like Eliezer, or the servant that went out, was operating on behalf of Abraham, out there doing the work of his master as a perfect representative. He wasn't doing nothing outside of what he had went out to go and do. And so again, all these things, we look at all of these things, it helps us to understand the way that we kind of should be acting and being in our lives today. Is that we have to know, first of all, we have to know what it is that the Most High would have for us to be doing, right? We have to have an understanding of what the word says, so that when the Most High, speaks with us, that we're able to understand that it is in fact the Most High, not just our own selves, like our minds telling us that we should be doing this or that, right? We have to have an understanding of the word, so that we're able to know that the Spirit is only going to bear witness with the word, right? The word of Elohim. And when we look at this story here, I always think that it's such a strong kind of representation of the Most High sending the Spirit out into the world and gathering up the bride to bring back to the Son, because that's where we are in terms of our life today. The Holy Spirit has been placed in the world to gather in the people of the Most High and bring us unto Himself, right? And the only way that we're able to be connected to the Father is through faith in what it is that Messiah has done for us, right? The fact that He came and lived and died and rose from the dead and went back to the Father and sent back His Spirit to change each and every one of us on the inside and transform us on the inside and cause us to walk in a newness of life. He, becomes this comforter, this consoler, this intercessor, this advocate for us, so that we're able to mend the relationship, is able to be mended, that was broken because of sin, and he's able to cause us to be right again. And so it's interesting that we kind of see this whole dynamic played out for us when we look at Genesis chapter 24, because from a physical standpoint, you see this thing being carried out. You know, if you think about the death of Sarah, you think about the fact that Isaac, you know, having lost his mother, right? When we see the severity, I guess we don't really understand the severity really of it until we see that it takes all of this to happen. You know, the joining of him with his new bride for him to be able to be comforted from his mother's death, right? We don't know exactly what the time frame of this is, right? From the time that she dies, from the time that the servant goes out and does all the things and comes back, all of this time, you know, Isaac is you know, in need of comfort, and he's not able to move forward until he's able to have this connection restored. And so when we think about our need for comfort, we think about the fact that, you know, outside of our connection to Yeshua HaMashiach, the void that exists inside of each and every one of us. We think about the need that we have to be comforted and reconnected to the source, life, light, the Most High. You know, it's it's such an interesting thing when we see this whole thing from you know, from start to finish, the way that this story connects with you know, the gospel. Genesis chapter 24 is the gospel, right? This is the story. You know, we are, you know, like Isaac. We're all of these things. We're like Isaac, waiting to be comforted. We're you know, we suffer from this great loss, this great separation, right? We're Rivka, right? We're Rebecca, waiting for our prince to come and rescue us from this life that we live of, you know, going to the well and filling up camel's water and going back, and, you know, we're waiting for someone to come and take us unto himself, right? We're able to see the fact that the Most High, you know, he sends out his most trusted servant to do his will, and he does it. He completes the task. He performs the will of the Most High. We have all of the ingredients, you know, together. And so, you know, when we look at this story, it's just very interesting that we see all of these different connections between the actual gospel and you know, just this story of Abraham and the servant and Isaac and Rebecca. Okay, let's see here. Before we conclude, do we have any last questions, comments over here in the comment section? Don't seem like I skipped anything. All right, so that being said, I guess for now we'll be done for now. everyone. Hope everyone has a blessed rest of your Shabbat. Yah willing, we'll be back on next Shabbat to continue with our look at the triennial Torah portion. So for now, we'll say Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.